You are now listening to Out of the Blank.
Hello?
Hello?
Hi, Robbie.
Hey, what's up, Fergus?
You just finished your shift, have you? Or?
Yeah, well, I was at the store helping some people out. I was getting a little bit of groceries and decided to take a couple minutes out of my day to help some woman kind of load up her cart.
Oh, fine, that's good.
Yeah. Wait, so you're from United Kingdom?
Yeah.
Dude, you have let me just say, a sexy accent.
Oh, cheers.
I'm trying to give you the vibe of how my podcast goes. So a lot about what my podcast is just kind of, just conversation between me and you, man. So anything you want to ask me, ask me. I'm going to ask you a hell of a lot of questions, especially about where you're from, because I don't know if you know too much about the United States, but I'm from a small, I mean, not really a small town, but a popular town during summer. A lot of businesses, a lot of music, a lot of drinking. Everybody around here drinks. I don't, but it's it's a constant moving town, and then during winter we have nothing. So I want to kind of ask what your thoughts are on the world, and we're just going to take this conversation wherever and see where it goes.
Cool. Sounds good.
So, where exactly in United Kingdom are you from?
I'm from a place called Newmarket. Newmarket, which is probably about 45 minutes from London, I would have said. It's mainly known for its horse racing in England. It's known for its horse racing. It's got 2 horse racing tracks in Newmarket. But another sort of fairly well known sort of city that I grew up in is Cambridge, which is a university city. Might be well known to your listeners of for the boat race.
What is it?
It's an educational city.
Can I ask you something? Is it constantly rainy and depressive there?
It's not actually. It's quite nice today. We've had quite good weather. I mean, the weekend it was kind of rainy, but before that we've had a sort of a mini heat wave where I am. Sort of.
Dude, I swear, every video I've ever seen from anybody that's from England, it's like the weather here is shit all the time. I'm like, that must be a terrible place to live in if it's just constantly rainy and dreary all day.
Yeah, I mean, it probably doesn't help, does it? It doesn't help people, as in that it doesn't build them up. If you wake up and you have a sunny day, you feel better, don't you, for it?
Yeah, you got more energy. You got to get that vitamin D in you.
Oh, definitely.
So, I have to ask, what do you do professionally?
Well, professionally, I am a carpenter. I run a small carpentry business. But I gave that up within the last sort of 3 weeks, I should think, because it was just too much for me. I went too quick, really.
How was it too much? Just like you just didn't like the work anymore?
Yeah, it just got to the stage of I lost passion for it. I really lost passion for it. I kept on going, as you do for your family and things like that. But I just lost passion for it, which sometimes happens. You can keep on going, but if you're not running a business that you can be passionate about, there's problems.
Yeah,
that's the last. I feel that is the last. Whether it's that's the last thing that you lose, and you can keep on working. But if you haven't got the passion for it anymore,
yeah. If you're not, I always say, if you enjoy making furniture. Or like, doing those, you ever hear about those people that like, they love assembling IKEA furniture? I don't understand these people at all, because every time I've dealt with any type of furniture I've gotten from a store or something, I feel like I'm always missing parts, or I have a lot more parts left over than I should. And that also, I think the first thing I built was a shelf, and it ended up falling down and breaking like everything on it, not even 5 minutes after someone set a drink on top of it. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, how the hell does anybody have the wantingness to build this type of shit? And I'm sitting there like thinking, and I'm like, there's some people out there that get an enjoyment of making their own furniture and, building these types of things. And whether they're good at it or not, they enjoy doing it. I think in life, it doesn't matter if you suck at something. If you enjoy it and you're willing to take the time to do it and do it, even though you suck or you're bad at it, that's worth doing. That's worth living for. That's because every day you're just going to get better. I built the shelf again, and the shelf's holding up multiple things now. Every time I pass it, I'm like, I fucking did that. I fucking built that thing. I put that in the wall. And then my cousin gives me the backhanded compliment like, well, that's a nice shelf. It's crooked though. I'm like, yeah, well, you know what? You're crooked, bro. Sorry. And it's all about, finding what you want to do in this world. And I think you can do something that you're not happy with and be amazing at your whole entire life. But what's the point of doing that if you can do something that you love doing every single day and suck at? That's fine. I work at a hotel where, I'm good at it. I don't want to do it for the rest of my life, but at the same time, it's a job. It just gets me money, but I like the podcast. Now, I'm not saying I'm good at it, but I like talking to people. I like hearing the stories that people tell. I like hearing the thoughts on the world that people have. We're sitting here podcasting. You're telling me the story of Fergus. What do you feel like you want to do with the rest of your life? Do you want to start a business? Do you want to?
Well, I've sort of started a business really, which is probably more along the lines of what you've got at this moment in time. I started up a sort of a podcast agency where I reach out to different people on their behalf and sort of book them for shows, and that's what I've sort of lent towards, sort of pretty much what you've said, because I started up as a listener, somebody that listens to podcasts, and got quite a lot from it. And then that developed into helping somebody from the US actually, getting a few people for his show. That was sort of free work. I was just helping him out, and I think that's the way that people start with businesses. Sometimes they have to do the sort of the free stuff, the pro bono stuff, to get themselves in or get themselves into a shop window for a period of time. And I've pretty much, I've developed it into a sort of a side hustle at the moment. But like you say, I think with podcasting, the connections, conversations, it's open. You can learn so much off different people from different parts of the world.
Dude, this podcast is an example of that. You're from United Kingdom, man. In my mind, I'm thinking tea and crumpets. You're talking to me. I'm from United States. Have you ever been to the States?
I have. I mean, I've only been to obviously once. I've been to the touristic places, which is obviously Florida. I went there on honeymoon, which I enjoyed. I enjoyed that really a lot. I went to see the basketball in Orlando, which was a good experience. And I went to the 2 theme parks, Universal and Walt Disney, which I saw a lot of, but I didn't really see a lot of America, if I'm being honest.
You just saw the public image that everyone sees. You don't see like the real nitty gritty of things.
Yeah. I mean, obviously it's a painted thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a little bit set out.
Seeing one perception of it.
Would you want to move here, or do you feel like you're more comfortable in England?
I've always had not aspirations, but obviously to travel around America. My granddad did a lot of he used to commute a lot to America, so that's always had the interest. And plus, over in the UK, you get a lot of American TV, don't you? You have a lot of American influences. Obviously, there's sort of English influences in America, isn't there, as well? So it goes sort of hand in hand. But
So, what made you come to the conclusion? For people that are listening, there, you run podcasts, Genie. You do a weird type of podcast because every podcast is different. But the fact that your podcast is all kind of about like a business setting up other people, it's for podcasts, which is something I definitely would love your services. I'd love your help in trying to get me different guests and stuff because
definitely I can help you out with that.
for me, I'm just here to hear the world. I want to know everyone's tale. I want to know that you're telling me the story of Fergus. I want to know what drives you, what you want to do with the rest of your life, what interests you, whether you want to talk about aliens 1 minute or you want to talk about science or life the next, I want to hear the story. Down here where I'm from, we have a popular attraction called the Boardwalk, which is like it's about 2.5 miles, but around 20 something streets of just nothing but, boards that you can just walk. It's like a good tourist attraction. You get to see all the carnival games and these types of things to do, bars, restaurants, Hooters. Do you have Hooters in the United Kingdom?
We do. We don't have it round here, but we do have it in some cities in United Kingdom. I think they do have one in London, Nottingham. I think there's a few cities that do have a Hooters.
Now, do they wear like Hooters? Do they wear Hooters clothing, or are they wearing rain jackets?
Rain jackets. I think it's all inside, as you imagine. Obviously, it's nice to be outside, isn't it? It's nice to be outside to have a drink or to eat your food outside. But obviously, we don't have the weather for it all year round. But yeah, we do get spells within sort of August, and the last couple of years it's been quite warm, to be honest, during those sort of months.
Oh, dude, the one day I had off, I went outside to go enjoy the sun a little bit. I was like, you know what? I don't feel like podcasting today, which is weird because I'm all about podcasting. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to go experience everything. I went out in the sun. I think I was on the boardwalk for like 2 hours. Yeah, I came back. The next day, I had freaking sunburn so bad, and I'm still going through it. And I'm like, the sun's an asshole. And my cousin's like, dude, but it's so good for you. I'm like, dude, you see my back? You can't tell me that's good for me. It hurts.
I think there's always advantages and disadvantages in life, isn't there? There's a balance. There's always a balance with certain things, isn't there? Whether you get too much or you get too little, or you get like you say, you get too much sun and you burn.
Yeah, I definitely think that the world is I think we're going through a lot. I do talk about the world a lot in society with my podcast, just because, I podcast with people I've met that come to America, like from Romania or some type of European country. And I kind of get their experience on thoughts and things in general, and, just how the world is. And everybody kind of falls in the same line and conclusion to how the world is. And that's that people are wearing masks. They're walking around kind of, like not really showing who they truly are. I think that we're all afraid to show who we truly are. I don't know if you experience that in the United Kingdom, but it's pretty common here in the States. Like it's.
I think that happens a lot with people, doesn't it? I mean, I think you sort of you're wearing a mask for your friends, family. It can be you can be going around wearing a mask and just living somebody else's life. I think that happens a lot with people, and then they don't realise until they wake up and they're a lot older, and they realise that they haven't been living the life that they truly want, or the life that they could have. But in other ways, they're sort of shut off. They don't see the other side. They only see one direction.
Yeah, we're very closed-minded to other people's feelings and stuff in general. And I've talked to people that have been involved in the Red Cross. I've talked to cops. I've talked to everything under the sun, even Jehovah's Witnesses, which I'm not saying I don't agree with, but I'm out there to hear. I'm open to all interpretations. Okay, I can't truly justify something. Like, I can't even make justifications about the United Kingdom or England. Saying that all you guys do is eat tea and crumpets, that's a judgment. And I know that to be 100% not true. I'm just obviously cracking a little bit of humor, but I've never experienced United Kingdom. It's definitely something I want to do. I want to take the time to go travel, and I want to podcast with essentially everyone in the world, which is impossible. But I feel like I learned, from my own influence and these types of things, like there's a form of therapy out there. I went to school for psychology. I went to school for helping others. I went to school for understanding the human mind. And I found I'm coming at a crossroads in my life where I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know if I want to be a therapist. I've a lot of my podcast is pretty locally, just because I like to do face-to-face conversations. I just started doing this over the phone, and I do want to give you a little shout out. Thank you so much for being on my podcast, and first of all, just messaging
No worries.
me.
I'm honoured to be on your on your podcast
And
be able to
like
spread my message through your listeners, or have a conversation like this to hopefully somebody out there will have some sort of benefit and think, oh, that's a good golden nugget there.
I think most people are going to be distracted by your accent, but
Okay.
I do have a favor. I do have a favor to ask of you. Another favor. I know it's a lot, but I want you to record my voicemail, so whenever somebody calls me, it's your voice.
Okay. Yeah, I can do that.
I'm just kidding. You don't have to do that. I know that's weird, but there's three people in the world I think I would want to have on my voicemail, and that's Christopher Walken. If I ever meet him, I swear to God, I'm making him make me a voicemail like, "Sorry, you missed your call at the window of opportunity." And like, I want that to be my voicemail, because I feel like the best things in the world are the little gifts and surprises that it has to offer. I think people are awesome. Everybody is, I'm awesome, you're awesome, but we all suck too. And I think
definitely.
I think the whole thing is we choose to suck, but we have an aspiration to be great. I think that we all, like what you're doing right now, helping somebody else with their podcast, or just taking maybe an hour out of their day just to talk to them. I don't limit my podcast to an hour. I just say it typically runs an hour, because I want people to understand, like, it doesn't take much to sit down and have a conversation. Next thing you know, you've been talking for like 2 hours, 3 hours. You're like, wow, time flies. I'm like, have you noticed that? Like, who has real conversations anymore? Why do we have to be at a bar, or why do we have to be drinking or doing something to get us to the point where we're open to people that we're supposedly supposed to be close to? But I can't tell you, with my friends nowadays, I have no idea what's going on in their lives anymore, because everybody gets so comfortable just wanting to stay home all the time and not go out and experience the world anymore, that we're losing something along the way.
Oh, definitely, in that art of conversation. I always think that what would be good if somebody did, there probably is people out there that do it, is actually doing a podcast with elderly people. So you're collecting all of those old conversations and those conversations that only see from their point of view, or how they saw the world, and sort of recording that.
Dude, I've tried to go to. I have tried so hard to go to retirement homes and get these elderly people on my podcast. I'm like, you grew up in the 20s, bro. Like, you experienced a life I had known nothing about. Like, what was it before email? Like, how the hell did you rely on a pigeon to carry your message? Like, what? Like, I don't understand. And like, my grandfather always gives me like the crap, like, you don't know what it was like to have to walk everywhere instead of being able to drive. I'm like, Jesus. Like, I mean, my great grandfather obviously explaining that one, but he was like, I remember, and he's telling me all this stuff that I grew up with, and I'm like, wow, like, I'm just seeing it unfold before me as technology becomes awesome, and it gives me this outlet to be able to connect with people around the world. Like, being able to talk to you, that's awesome right there, because you're in a whole nother country. But at the same time, I feel like it's a detriment, because we're truly losing the grasp of reality. We're trying to seclude ourselves and be comfortable in this little form. We're not truly looking at, I guess, things of like what's going on around us anymore, or just people around us. Like, we're just not giving a shit anymore. We're just taking everything for granted.
The physical world, and sort of like putting a mask on or a barrier on, and sort of not being like true selves sort of thing.
Yeah, we're not
allowing ourselves to be our true selves.
We're not being independent anymore. We're just we're relying on something that, you know, has major kind of flaws, like technology. You know, people aren't 100% flawless, obviously, but, you know, I would rather trust a person than a machine. It's weird walking into a store nowadays and seeing the, you know, the self checkouts and all those types of things, even though I choose to do that anyway because I don't feel like talking to people a whole lot. But, you know, I know it's weird, but it's like every time I walk out into the world, I'm like, I'm ready to hear some stories. And the next thing I know, after 5 minutes, I'm like, wow, this is depressing. Like, everybody's just looking at the floor. Nobody's making eye contact. Nobody's like, especially the kids. Like, I mean, I'm 21, so I can't say kids, but, you know, all the people that are just on their phones nowadays looking down, and then they bump into you and then they expect you to apologize. I'm like, no, bro, you bumped into me. But it's weird because you do this podcast, and I'm going to give it a shout out, Podcast Genie. Like, is this something that you want to do for the rest of your life? Like, do you want to turn this?
It's not actually. That is the business. Is Podcast Genie. I will be going shortly and launching a podcast that will be about. It won't be an entrepreneurial podcast or a conversation. It'll be more about the love for podcasts and the getting people involved in podcasts. That's what it'll be about. It'll be called the podcast experience. I'm working on that at the moment. The
podcast experience. I like that. Are you gonna now? I'm just gonna say, are you gonna have tea time on your podcast?
Tea time. I wasn't thinking that it'd be a daily podcast, but yeah, I mean that I'm open to ideas.
Dude, you should do tea time with Fergus. That'd be awesome. And then someone listens into it, and you're just like, "Look, I'm from England. We all don't drink fucking tea." That'd be funny, dude. I would be dying laughing. I'd love that. I think, you know. So, what do you want to do? Like, I know you say don't really want to do an entrepreneurial podcast, but you just want to highlight the aspect of how podcasts are helping others. It would
be formatted sort of the same, because you always have to open up the conversation, and you always have to introduce the guest to the podcast. So it will still have to be this is his or her story. And then it will be, so what was your podcast story? What did you learn along the way? What were the pitfalls? What were the mistakes you made? And just put it out there and think, because I think a lot of people as well get stuck with podcasts. I think people find it, they think that it's just a 5-minute wonder, and that they're gonna put 5 podcasts and they're gonna be Gary V, which isn't gonna happen. I think as well as that, it gives people a bit more inspiration of what they can do, and more information, and through these people, they are podcasters, they are guests, they're going to be athletes, and people with various different understanding of podcasts. So even listeners.
Yeah,
podcasts and recommendations for podcasts. So that's what I'm building up at the moment.
I think that's awesome, because I think what you understand, kind of how I think about it too, is that, like, all we need to do, it doesn't take much, but we just need to understand one another for sure. I think if people understood each other better, and we took the time to get to actually know somebody, like, dude, you don't know how many times I've asked somebody to be on my podcast, and they've just been like, I can give you 20 minutes. Right then, when I hear that response, I'm like, no, I'm good. And they're like, wait, I thought you wanted to do this. You've been messaging me for a week. I'm like, yeah, but if you're thinking of it as like a job or something that's going to take 20 minutes out of your day, then we already are not on the same page, because it's a conversation. You know, we're here talking. I don't want to feel like I'm rushing you. You know, I don't limit to an hour. I just like it to go at least an hour. I'd love to be able to talk to you for 2 to 3 hours. I want to hear the whole thing, because, you know, what makes it awesome about getting everybody's experiences and stories is they're constantly changing all the time. But you've lived a life, whether you're 5, whether you're 10, whether you're 26. Obviously, it's easier to podcast with an older person than it is with someone who's 5 years old. Mostly because a 5-year-old is just going to talk about what they saw on television that day. I'm like, oh wait, you're still a child. But the whole thing is, we all have some interesting.
Be interesting though. Could be interesting. Could be interesting to see that perspective. If you could get that perspective on recorded, that might be an interesting thing, because obviously when you go through life, different stages within life, obviously you have different changes and you see the world a lot differently, different eyes. And as you're growing up, and obviously things like people, they can sort of move you and make you think the world in a different way, because you take on their sort of their values of what the world is. So yeah, I mean that could be quite interesting. It'd be quite interesting to see how you sort of you can keep that attention span for a 5-year-old for that long, but it might be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, for sure. What types of people or podcasts have you helped out? Like, give me some kind of like things you've done with your podcast that you see it moving in the right direction.
Well, I mean, we're building a website at the moment. I don't really talk about the people that I've worked with unless they come forward and give me a testimonial, or give me, which my testimonials are on my Facebook page at the moment and my LinkedIn page, which I can link at a later date. But I generally that's how I work. There is testimonials there, but
well, you don't have to give specific examples of, like, you don't have to give the names of these people.
I have worked with I've worked with entrepreneurs. I've worked with TEDx speakers. I've worked with 2 Paralympians that have been in the Olympics.
Whoa, that's awesome.
So yeah, I mean, I've helped these guys out to obviously project their voice onto a different stage, which they've been pleased with, and hopefully that will help them with different opportunities. And obviously, like what we're talking now, just sort of networking, just having that conversation and opening it up.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think, like, obviously there's a podcasts are becoming a lot bigger nowadays. It seems like everybody kind of has one, and it never used to be like that. Like, one of my main influences was Joe Rogan, his conversations with all these interesting people he has on. It's weird to hear. Like, I've probably watched every episode of Joe Rogan. I don't know how many times I spouted a couple things he said on my podcast, but, I like how he runs it, because it's real. It's real conversation,
Definitely.
I don't want you to censor yourself. If you feel like dropping an F-bomb at that moment, then do it. I don't want you to disguise yourself. I tell people all the time that we are already doing that enough in the world today. It doesn't make sense to do it on air or something. And I've had, a lot of people come to me and go, hey man, I appreciate you letting me talk on your podcast. It was a form of therapy. I'm like, that's not what I meant by it. I mean, I did it for me. I did it because, I wanted to be able to talk to you and better understand your way of thinking and how the world works. You don't understand the benefit of understanding just that word, just understanding people, understanding other people's thoughts and stuff. People think that, oh, knowledge is power. Yeah, and let me tell you, the type of knowledge I receive from doing podcasts is something I'll take through life. Like, I can read a book, okay? I can do that, and I can read the words. It's the same thing. This is just another outlet that's easier for me, that I find I enjoy more than reading a biography. I can read a biography and get a bunch of information from it, but half the time I get to page 3, I'm like, holy shit, how many more chapters in this book? 972 pages. Oh God. But I listen, I'm sitting there and I'm like, I could just be talking to somebody right now and getting a whole new experience. And whether it's over a podcast or not, I go over to you, I'm like, hey man, how'd you get that tattoo on your face? Like, what's that about? And then they tell me this story. I'm like, damn, that's awesome. You know, I've worked with people and talked to people that I just found out have been doing amazing things with their life, and I'm like, holy shit, like maybe I should get that story out there because you might, you've affected my life. Maybe you might affect somebody else out there. And to
Oh,
think
definitely.
there's obviously
Def-
people that you're gonna be like, oh, well, I think everything he says is wrong. Okay, we're not meant to agree 100% with everybody on this earth. We're not meant to,
mm.
understand each other. I I would love to just. I just want to hear everybody's opinions on things, whether I agree with it or not. It doesn't matter. I don't think there's ever any arguments in the world. I think there's just two conclusions that didn't reach the same outcome. I think that we just
Oh,
reached a different
definitely.
agreement.
100%. I agree with you. Agree with you there. I mean, obviously that it can be just two different opinions. You can be both right. It's not. It's as simple as that. It doesn't always have to be that one's right and one's wrong. They just see it from a different direction.
Have you tried talking to some of the people in your country, just like face to face or podcast with them maybe?
As in, if face to face, yeah. Well, I've done. I've done that. I've spoken to them face to face. At the moment, what I'm looking to do is, I'm giving my services. I want to be on sort of as have as many opportunities as what I can do with podcasts like this, really. And I understand that really that it's whether you've been in a situation or not been in a situation where your thing, there's an art to everything, and there's like footprints or a trail that you have to follow, and within that, people will decide whether there's opportunities out there for you to go further. And it's the same thing with this podcast. It's like business. It's like business. If you put a product out there, the people will say whether they will take it or not. If the story's good enough, or they think that you can give value to their show, or you can give value to their listeners, or you can give value to people in general. That's obviously, that's for them to decide. They will decide. I mean, they'll decide probably when this goes live. They'll decide by subscribing, or they'll decide by downloading.
Or they might just not even look at it. I don't do this for I do this to help somebody out there, but that's not the main point of it. I do it because I'm enriching not only my own life, but trying to get as much as the world as I possibly can through people's stories and experiences. You can't tell me how old are you?
I'm 33.
You can't tell me at 33 years old that your life's not interesting or you haven't done anything with your life. You can't. There's no way you can say that. I don't even think a 12-year-old has the ability to say that. And truly, it means something.
Oh, definitely.
I've messaged so many people that feel like, oh, my life's not interesting. I haven't done anything with my life. I'm like, but you have. You're telling me you're 24 years old and you haven't had one thought about the world at all. One thought, not anything. Whether it's the best deal in the world is buy one get 2 boxes of Honey Smack cereal, which is like my all-time favorite cereal. Like when that's a fucking that I see that makes me believe in God. Like holy crap, like there's amazing things in this world, but that's a thought about the world. I had it. Whether it was something simple like that, people don't realize how fucking awesome they are, man. They only see it when it gets highlighted in a video. Like people are awesome. Yeah, it's cool to see a dude jump out of freaking a plane that's like basically out of the atmosphere and then fly down to the earth, in a jet suit. That's cool as shit. And then it makes them feel lazy that they're not doing anything in their life. Like, wow, that guy's special because I'm not special. Dude, do you get up every morning? Yeah? Okay, then. That's pretty fucking special. Tell me about it. Like, did you dream last night? What'd you dream about? My buddy sleeps with his eyes open. It's weird. I don't like him sleeping at my house because of it. But, it's interesting because he tells me like, dude, that was the best sleep of my life. I'm like, dude, I watched you stare at a wall for 7 hours. Like, not moving, not blinking, just staring at a wall. Like, You call that sleeping? He's like, dude, I was out, man. I was like, okay, that's weird. But at the same time, it's interesting, you know? We have these little things about us that he's like, I never see that as interesting. I just have always done it. You never know how truly like awesome or special you really are if someone doesn't highlight it or ask you questions or try and understand it.
I think they call that the curious mind, they call that. And obviously, like, sort of to find out the nuts and bolts about somebody as well. That's sort of being curious about how they are and how they work, which is it's fascinating.
Now I know you're here giving me like your services to help my podcast, which I appreciate 100%, but I don't want to sit here and just rant the whole time about me talking. I want to get your thoughts on things. You know, what's some stuff that you feel like you have some steps in your life to kind of take towards, and what are some stuff you've kind of figured out about the world? Like, nobody starts out. I mean, everybody kind of starts out. I think when you're a baby and you're born into this world, you're in a pure form. You know, you've been basically unscathed or uncorrupted by what the earth or society kind of affects with you. But how do you continue at the age of 33 to be willing to help others? What is this something you wanted to do when you were as a kid?
Yeah, I suppose. Well, my mother was a nurse, so within that was like sort of caring profession. That was something that was probably put into me then. But yeah, I imagine that it's just how you grown up, isn't it? I think what you do, as in obviously. Could be, obviously don't want to get on the subject, but like how your even sort of religious beliefs or what has sort of your foundations, I suppose, foundations in the world. I suppose that's the way you can look at it. But yeah, I think that's the main thing. I mean, at 33, sort of having a wife and a child and everything else. Within that, you sort of try. I suppose you just limit yourself, but really there are sort of no limitations, and there's not a script to follow. And really, some of these things that you only set boundaries for yourself through yourself. When really you need to sort of grasp life and do different things and see if you like certain things, and you'll only do that by actually getting up and actually doing them.
Yeah, I definitely think people get too comfortable and they don't want to go and experience the world anymore. They just feel like, oh, well, this is what life is. You know, I work, go home, sleep, work, go home, sleep. I'm like, is that what you want to do for the rest of your life? Do you want to be in a retirement home and someone wheels your 90-year ass or 90-year-old ass up to the window and you're staring out the window like, well, I made it through life? No, you don't want that to happen. I would hate that. You know how many times I've talked to my grandparents and they've had to be forced to grow up because of the just the things that went on around in society around them, where either it was my grandfather that, you know, lost his dad when he went into the army. He had to go home and take care of his younger siblings and his mom and be the man of the house at a age of 20 something years old. I'm like, he was forced to grow up. You know, he was forced to do things and put his goals on hold. And he has a lot of stuff, I guess you could say.
I suppose it's sort of age resentment.
Yeah.
That is, in a way, it's missed opportunities that he's regretting now, which I imagine you get looking back, and you haven't taken those opportunities within your life.
Yeah, and I see him. I hear him.
It's a completely different. I mean, obviously, it's a different world now. I mean, obviously, you make excuses anyway, but within that, you were told the good thing is to get a job, and you go down this channel of going to university or college, and you're set out on a regimented course, and that's set out for every individual. And if you go off that course, you're not
truly being happy anymore.
Well, no, it's not truly being happy, but you're not in the system. You're not doing the same as everybody else. So it's sort of frowned upon by other people. I imagine that you especially in that time, your grandfather's time, I imagine that isn't a done thing. So you're being looked at like you a bit not outcasted, but a bit of a daydreamer. You're a dreamer.
Yeah, why is creativity pushed into a weird corner? Throughout history, it's done that. I think the world at the start just decided creativity, with even though how much it's changing now, people being more, creative, I think, but also it seems like people are losing it along the way. Like, let's say Leonardo da Vinci, people called him a madman. That was one person I'd want to meet in my life is Leonardo da Vinci. I'd love to be able to go back in time and just sit and watch him work. He has one of my favorite quotes that a piece of art is never finished. It's just left undone. And he believed that you can add things all the time and it's never truly completed. And that's what people are. We're a constant work in progress that never reaches its final product. We're always constantly either bettering or doing something in our life that is getting us to a different level. And, like Travis Barker, I don't know if you know him, the drummer for Blink-182.
Yep.
Like, he had a dream, he had a passion, he wanted to drum, and he was living on friends' couches because he needed that kick in the ass to get him out of the house playing drums. And his dad was like, look, you're 20-something years old, man. I'm not going to sit here and listen to you play drums and hear how this is what you want to do for the rest of your life. Either get a job, get a 9-to-5, get sustainability in your life, or get out of my house. And he decided he needed to get out of the house because he didn't feel comfortable working in a 9-to-5 position. He took one of the hardest things to do in this world, chase down a music career. And a lot of people don't make it, but I don't see them as people that don't make it. I see them as people that are still trying to make it. You can, Ron White, one of the famous comedians, he didn't reach his comedy professional career until he was in his 50s. Like, he was selling insurance he was selling solar panels or some shit as a career, and then one day it just all started kickstarting for him. It all just started going and things started happening. I think as if you're willing to have, I guess, a goal in your head or a mindset of this is what you want to do, the only thing stopping it is you. The only thing is, obviously you want to have a job to be able to sustain yourself, but that doesn't mean like you should give up on anything you want to keep pursuing. Like, if you want to be, a professional arm wrestler, let's say, I've talked to someone that's what they did for a short time. And I was like, what? Like, that's something a kid says to their parents, and their parents are like, you're an idiot. Get a job.
But that's the thing that you don't realise until these things, like obviously whether that was an interview or you spoke to somebody, you wouldn't have thought that was a career. And there's very many careers out there now that you wouldn't have first thought about. And even with the age of the internet and everything else, for people that would have seen this, I think it was, I don't know, it might have been in the 90s, and they said, oh, it's, this whole internet thing's going to last about 3 years and it's going to disappear. It didn't. I mean, it's the same thing for Blockbuster and Netflix, and the list goes on. I mean, there's a lot of people that, you got to grow with the times, and sometimes that with that evolution, there are jobs that come about that wouldn't be your normal jobs, and obviously through evolution, we might not be talking about even in the construction industry. I mean, with the age of, the age of robots, there might be robots in, 100 years' time that are building houses, or you've got prefab houses that are just craned in, and that's it, and it's done.
Sooner or later,
you just got to wire it up and done, which is already on the market.
Yeah. Sooner or later, I believe conversations.
It's getting more and more automated. Life is getting more and more automated, and people want simplicity of it as well. So there are jobs that people don't want to do. There's people, and there's opportunities there for people to take advantage of that. The people that don't want to do those kind of jobs, and there's various jobs out there for people to do, or even little businesses that they can start up.
Yeah, a lot of like I've talked to local business owners, and they talk about how they will never get automated machines like some corporate job will, and I'm like, I see where you're coming from that, but at the same time, don't you want your business to be more effective? And they're like, no, because I think what makes anything essential is human communication. You know, it's becoming less and less in the world today. You know, even though devices are being incorporated and used more, and technology is advancing in a way to connect more people from across the world, much like how this phone call is able to do. But at the same time, people don't ever take the time to just sit and talk. You know, when I do face-to-face talks and have these people like sit down and just hang out and do this stuff, I tell them, give me your phone. They're like, what? I'm like, give me your phone. And I take their phone from them.
The instructions.
Yeah, well, I take their phone from them like a child, and I just set it in the corner, put it on silent, just set it in the corner. And they're like, why are you doing that? I'm like, cuz I don't want this little thing distracting you from, talking to me, And I want you to be in the conversation. And the next thing you know, they don't miss their phone. They're never on it. If I know for a fact that you can sleep 8 hours and not be on your phone once. And if you can do that, you can take an hour and not be on the phone. That's all it is, And
to be fair, all of these things that you get nowadays, when your phone goes off, the notifications, the beeps, and everything else you get off your phone, people instantly react to it. A lot of these things they don't need to react to.
Like how so?
Yeah.
How so? Like how? Well, you say they don't react. Like what do you mean?
Well, they're always looking for a reaction, which is obviously is probably down to the dopamine hit that they get through Facebook or through social media, or through just their phone of getting a notification, and obviously that they're always in a reactive state, and they have to react to every little thing. But really, if like you say, if they took half an hour, a few hours out, there's nothing going to be on that phone that's going to be that is going to be an emergency, unless you do get a phone call from somebody that you're not ordinarily going to get a phone call off, and you think to yourself, "Oh, what's this? What's this all about?" It is about people being in the moment.
Yeah, you feel like when you set your phone down for an hour and you get into a deep conversation afterwards, you're like, "All right, man, you can have your phone back." It's like, "Oh, did you not want to keep talking or something?" It's like, no. You said you had to be gone at this time, so it's that time. They're like, "Whoa, it's already that time." It's like, yeah, you get lost in conversation. It's the same shit. Like you're at a bonfire at 3:00 in the morning. You and your buddy are drunk. You have no idea what the hell was said, but every time you look at him now, you have a moment that you connected with that person where you think of him as a brother. You're always going to remember that, even though you don't remember what was said. We experienced that not even being drunk, even just sitting at a dinner table and having conversations with someone at a restaurant, or being able just to sit down and actually talk and experience a moment together. Like, we don't do that anymore. And technology, like, how many kids nowadays actually have parents that sit down at the dinner table and have a dinner together? That doesn't really happen a whole lot anymore. That's like gone nowadays.
Sad. Yeah.
Yeah, like the only time I ever experience that now is at my grandparents' house. Like my grandma cooks something, like, "Come on, we're sitting down eating." I'm like, "What?" Like I can't just pull up in front.
It comes back down to the value of what it is. I mean, when you used to send say you sent a letter in the old days, where you sent a letter, you still do send letters today, obviously, but when you send a letter, you've always got that you're waiting for that response as well. But it was always handwritten. You always got that sort of touch to it. But now, if you send a text message, it's with somebody within sort of for less than a second, at a blink of an eye, or an email is sent at a blink of an eye, and the value of that is less, because obviously you don't pay for a postage stamp. You pay for a stamp that means that there's more value to it, to getting to the right person. But within the sort of digital age, these things have made it easier to communicate, but obviously the value is less.
Yeah, and I see it affecting, I guess, older people too nowadays because, my grandparents back when I was a kid was like, no, there's no technology, no Game Boys, none of that at the dinner table. We're going to sit here, have a family dinner and talk and enjoy this because this is how I grew up and this is we got to experience these moments together. These are stuff that you're going to look back on. And I look back on it now because when I go over there and have, my grandma, whenever she does dinners now, is just like, cooks a big thing for the family. Everybody comes, eats, sits at separate tables or sits down in front of the TV, watches whatever football, whatever event's going on, and doesn't care anymore. I'm like, what happened? I remember the other day everybody got pissed off at me because, not the other day, it was like Thanksgiving time last year. I walked up, turned the TV off when everybody was sitting down in front of the TV with a nice little bit of food, and I was like, come on. We're all sitting at the dinner table, all my uncles screaming and yelling at me. Everybody just like, what are you doing? The game's on. I'm like, no, like, okay, find out later. I get it. All right. I get it. You're here for the game. Sit down and enjoy some turkey. But, people, my grandma worked hard as shit cooking this food. We can take 5 minutes to sit down at the table, eat it, and be able to talk and be able to see what the hell's going on with people's lives. And you get to see who truly gives a shit about another person when that happens, because there were people at my family that scarfed down their food in 5 minutes and ran right back to the TV and did not want to get into a conversation at all, didn't care what was going on. And then there were people there that slowly ate their food, and then after they ate their food and they were done and they can get up from the table, because my grandma has this crazy rule of clean plate club. You're not able to get up until it's finished. And that's a great way of looking at it, because even with these people with their plates being just done clean and just sitting there at the table still just talking, I'm like, there you go. You're not on your phone right now. You're experiencing something. And, the other day I gave my grandmom crap for it because she was on her she's been getting into like her iPad and everything. She knows how to work it better than I do. And she was poking me on Facebook. I was like, what the hell's poke on Facebook? Like, I'm out of that world. I have no idea. But she's becoming so adopted into the new way that society does things with technology now. It's scary to see. I'm like, whatever happened to the days where we used to just sit and talk? And she goes, oh, well, you guys stopped doing it and didn't seem interested in doing it anymore. And I got tired of trying to, get you guys into it anymore. So I just decided to change with you. And I'm like, wow. When she said that, I looked at my life and I was like, she's right. Like, holy crap. Like, I started looking back, like, my past 7 years of eating dinner, now that I'm an adult, has been like in my room, or, doing something while like real quick in the kitchen, eating in the kitchen, then going off and doing something else, like eating just as a thing. I never get to sit down and enjoy conversations anymore. And, I piss people off in my family with it. I piss people off with, just in the world today when I want to sit and just have a conversation. Like, can I get you anything else? Do you want another side of fries? No. Can I actually get a refill on this drink? And do you have a minute to talk? Like, okay. Next thing you know, I'm sitting there talking to the waitress, talking to the waiter, and just finding out what their life's about. Like, hey man, like, how's your day going? Is it rough? And they start complaining about their life, whatever they want to do. That gets a little bit of their pent up anger or, a little bit of depression out. It doesn't take long to just sit down and have a conversation with somebody. And once I started realizing this, I started realizing I can keep my phone in the car when I go into the grocery store. I can, I love technology. Don't get me wrong. I don't know what I'd do without Instagram and, but I believe like when you're on Instagram and, I'm at fault of doing this too. I'll put up a picture of like a 6-pack at me at the gym or something. It's an attention grab though. And I see it all the time nowadays. Everything's just an attention grab. Like, hey, you got this. Check this out. Hey, check this out. Hey, check this out. I never started promoting my podcast. I let it spread at word of mouth. And then it got to a point where I felt like, okay, I do need to find an outlet to promote it out there. But I'm not going to sit there and pay Facebook $15 to go promote it for me, even though that could get me a lot more views and attention. I don't want that. I want it to be this thing like, hey, I had a fun time on this. You should do it. I think you'd enjoy it. There you go. That's what I want. I want people to experience it for themselves. And I think in the world today, with how we're reliant on everything, we just lose it.
Oh, definitely. I mean, if you don't do it, then you lose it. It's like a muscle, isn't it? like if you don't go to the gym, if you don't work out, you lose that muscle, and that happens with anything, doesn't it? It can help happen with knowledge and obviously talking, communicational skills, because you've segregated yourself off through technology and only been sort of doing stuff for your own benefit.
Yeah, and a lot of people think like, oh, I just don't talk to people because no one understands or is thinking the way I think. I'm like, dude, there's a million people out there thinking exactly like you, and are exactly in your position, and that's not.
And I think
that's
the other thing with the internet and having sort of Facebook and Facebook groups and meeting new individuals. Within that, you can find your tribe. You can find the people that relate to it.
Yeah.
I mean, that is obviously another thing. I mean, it's obviously in a plus column for the digital world, that you can find your tribe or find the people that you relate to, or your podcast that your podcast relates to, and yeah, you can do it in many forms, even just as a thing that everybody within the group likes football, likes American football, and you all get together or likes a certain club, and then you make friendships off the back of that. That can happen.
Yeah, the internet literally has become a social group like in schools. There are the geeks, there are the jocks, there are these people that you connected to based on what you were interested in. The internet has made social groups or these types of cliques more expansive, whether you want to be, oh, I like to jet ski, but I like to do it naked. Okay, well, that's going to put you in a very, very rare class of people right there, like a very few amount of people. But that's not saying you're the only one out there that likes doing that, It's.
But I think within sort of, obviously, the podcasting world, that sets you out from the rest and the business world. If you've got a niche that you can adopt or program yourself into, that is important, and obviously there'll be people that are looking out for that kind of thing. Obviously, with the right advertising and put yourself out there, that can build another tribe of people and supporters for you.
Yeah, for sure, man. And I think it takes, like I was saying before, it doesn't take much to just sit down and have a conversation. And at the same time, like, whether someone wants to choose to listen to this episode or not, go ahead. If you don't want to listen to it, I'm not forcing you to listen to it. But I think too many problems.
That's not a problem nowadays as well. I mean, you think there's over 700,000 podcasts out there. There's that, if you take that into channels, TV channels that you used to have. And you used to have, in the UK, we used to just bog standard 5 channels, terrestrial channels. But now you're unlimited. You can go or watch whatever you want. If it's not for you, then you'd only listen to it for maybe 30 seconds. I mean, that might be an attention problem for people nowadays, as in they can't have a long attention span because of having those things that are so on demand. But that is another thing that you can do. You've got freedom of choice, and obviously there's podcasts for all sorts of things. There's podcasts for TV, film, even stories, audio, even languages.
Yeah, it seems like whatever you're interested in, there's something for it.
System, like an audio book or an audio thing like that, and like obviously like podcasts like we're talking like now, or there's fitness, sport. There's a whole wide range, and obviously, like I say, there's 700,000 podcasts out there. So you've got a number. You're not restricted in that way. And obviously, if you're learning new skills or learning new things, there's obviously a lot out there for that. And at the moment, and obviously it's getting less and less, but there's sort of more people going for sort of paid content, which is obviously going to be a thing. But there's obviously there's a lot out there for people nowadays to learn different things, learn different skills through the internet. They're not going to be masters at it, because sometimes within skills you have to develop them. You have to develop those hands-on skills. But it gives people a whole range of things, and obviously notifies them of different knowledge that they wouldn't normally have, or they wouldn't have in a normal environment. To be able to collate that global knowledge. So that is where we're at today.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, man. I think you hit the nail right on the head. I just think, creativity is being pushed into a corner where, technology is helping, but at the same time, people aren't helping it. I think there's a lot of creative people out there that are afraid to be creative because they're afraid someone's going to tell them it's going to suck. We're too afraid of rejection. I'm like, do you think that's common because people are more willing to shit on something than say something's good? But I just think...
I think it comes down to the stage of, if you don't try it, or you don't go out there to try it,
yeah,
if you're not willing to try it, then you'll never know. And you need to make mistakes. You need to go out there and make mistakes. Make 100 mistakes.
For example, my buddy loves Jerry Seinfeld. I fucking hate Jerry Seinfeld. I can't stand his voice. It's too nasally. And he's like, I can't believe, he's just your comedy. He does actually this show where he interviews people and they get into different cars. I'm like, I've watched 2 minutes of it. I can't get past Jerry Seinfeld. They're like, can't you just skip out the parts with Jerry in it? I'm like, no. Just knowing he's there. Like, I don't hate him, like, personally as a person. I'd love to probably talk to him, but I guarantee you that would be the one podcast that would only go 5 minutes because I wouldn't be able to stand it. And it's just because that's just not something I'm interested in. I don't like him that much. So I don't listen to him. I choose not to just bother myself with it. I'm not going to sit there and attack him personally and be like, hey, Seinfeld's the worst, and go on Twitter and do all these types of things, whatever, to show everybody what my opinion is. No, I'm just like, hey, he's not something I'm interested in, so why the hell am I going to take time out of my day to, chase after something I don't enjoy? It doesn't make any sense to me. People don't see that. People see it as like, well, I just want people to know that he did that. I'm like, but why do you care? Obviously, if he did something bad that's truly bad, somebody's going to get that from that themselves. They're going to make their own justifications. So my main thing is, make justifications and opinions on your own experiences, not on what others tell you. You watch the news 24/7 and you're constantly hearing the world is crap, and then you go out thinking the world is crap and people suck. Okay? Are you experiencing that yourself and you're getting that firsthand, or are you just hearing that from another source and not willing to take the time into deciding it for yourself?
I think that's with sort of obviously media has changed with obviously things like this, with podcasting, with posts and freedom of speech. But obviously there's still types of old media of the news and newspapers and things like that, and obviously news coverage and obviously old systems that are still around that obviously they want you to think a different way, because they want to sort of manipulate you into a different way of thinking, their way of thinking, which may be right, it might not be right, or it might not be right for you. It's just something that you've got to sort of decide. Yeah,
I definitely think that, there's a lot of this world that, is wonderful to discover. Dude, I can't tell you how many nights at 2 o'clock in the morning I've sat down and chased down the rabbit hole of Bigfoot, trying to understand if Bigfoot's real. And, next thing I know, my buddy's messaging me like, dude, why are you diving this far into it, bro? Like, go to sleep or something. Like, maybe you need to sleep. I'm like, no, because I want to know. I need to know Bigfoot exists. I'm sorry. I can't. My life's not going to be complete until I get down to that journey. And I'm just using him as an example. But I think, if you truly want to understand something, the only way you can truly do that is by experiencing it and getting the information for yourself. You know what I mean? You can't rely off one source and be like, oh, all Chinese people are bad because, you know, I heard from, okay, there's where you're wrong. Did you experience that yourself? Did you go over there and experience each person individually and realize that that's what your conclusion was? No, I just heard it from this one.
Though that if you're doing something, I think you need to, like, for instance, if you're going out for mentors or anything like that, as in sort of the business world or anything like that, you need to sample a little bit of everything and then realise what you're actually looking for, what sort of characteristics do they have, and then get very single, it's a tunnel vision then. I think that's important, that you get very tunnel vision then to take lessons that they learn, because I think sometimes if you take lessons from here, there, everywhere, you just get confused and you get overwhelmed with what their teachings are. You need to have that one. To go forward, you do need to obviously sample a little, like I say, a little bit of everything, but you need to have that one.
Do you feel like
so
people
you know where you're going and what your course is, what your plan is, and where you're heading towards? Because you need a target to go to. You know, there's no point in having no direction whatsoever, and that is important.
Yeah, well, everybody needs a sense of purpose. Do you think that people in the United Kingdom, or the UK, whatever, do you think that people there are a lot more like just comfortable with where their lives at and aren't willing to go and achieve something like a goal or something?
I wouldn't say that. I think it's different than obviously America, because obviously America is based on like the sort of the, not with everyone, but the immigrant edge, and I think a lot of people within the US have obviously got that, and obviously that works for them. So there is people that have been obviously I can't really think of the words, but they've been diluted in the way that they can be. So then they have got the entrepreneurial spirit and the entrepreneurial journey, and I think that's obviously something that comes across. I mean, it might not necessarily come across in America from somebody looking from the outside looking in. That's what comes, whereas the UK isn't really. It doesn't really help out its businesses as such, small businesses. And I don't think that it necessarily puts the knowledge there at the early stages for that. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, like much like you were saying, tunnel vision, man, that's a thing, and you don't just experience it when you're driving or when you're getting like a bunch of adrenaline running through you. I think people are tunnel vision's getting worse and worse and worse because people are just focused in like, this is how life is. I go home, do this, stick to this routine. I don't like to do anything else. I'm like, okay, well, if that's what you want to do, then I'm not going to try and change you. Hell, if that's not what you want to do, I'm not going to try and change you either. But I'm also not going to take the time out of my day to show it to you like, hey, this is stupid that you're doing this. No, fucking do what you want to do. You know, you have the keys to your own car. I can give you directions on where you can take it, but at the same time, I'm not going to shovel a lifestyle or something you have to follow in your face. I can only give you the guidelines to help you out, but you can take everything I say and shove it right out the window if you want. I don't care. But the whole thing is, I told you my thoughts on things, and you can choose to take that and go anywhere you want. But if you don't want to, that's fine. If you feel like you got another outlet or you didn't agree with me at all, then you just go and take it into your own way. I'm grateful to try and understand how everybody thinks. And whether you have a podcast about sharks, whether you have a podcast about fruit, whether you have a podcast of just eating Raisin Bran for 15 minutes, the crunching, yeah, there's going to be people out there that be like, what the hell? But I guarantee to you, it'll be 3 o'clock in the morning. I'll be listening to a podcast of just a dude eating cereal. I'm like, I don't know why I'm listening to this, but it's fucking awesome. Like, subscribe. And it's like, that whole thing, like, there are moments and thoughts and experiences we're constantly changing and constantly developing, whether it's this or that. This, it's just we're in a constant work in progress, and we're never truly finished, man. And whether you're willing to take the time to help others because you feel like that's what you have to do, or whether you're taking the time to, be able to, I don't know, get a score of 200 on Tappy Birds or whatever that game was, Flappy Birds, whatever. It's all about what your life is and what you're going to make of it. You have the only person, you have the only, you're the only you. I can't control you at all, without putting a chip in your head or doing some type of Terminator type stuff. But you have the only way of changing what your life is. You want to better it, then better it. Okay, well, I can't because this. Okay, we'll find a way around it. If it's a rock in your path, you can't move it, then find a way around it. You got to flow like water sometimes. You can't just let every single obstacle stop you, or you're never going to amount to anything in life, sadly. That's, there's always going to be problems in the world. There's always going to be obstacles, and you got to learn to overcome those things. And I think that's with a lot of people that are very successful today. Like, they've just learned to move around the problems or find a way to get rid of it. And sometimes suppressing a problem is the only thing you can do, until one day you come across the tools that can help you achieve on eliminating it. And I think once people understand that more and are willing to kind of be open to the aspect of not harming other people because they're just not happy with their life, then we'll truly be free. We'll truly be able to express ourselves in ways where the world will turn into a better place, slowly but surely. I know that I've talking to people that deal with the Red Cross and talking to people that deal with other types of outlets of helping others. Like, those aren't, you see those people and you're like, wow, those are just amazing people. Yeah, but everybody's amazing. It's just these people are going and doing what they want to do. They believe that they can change the world by helping others in places that they don't have help. They don't have support. It shouldn't be seen as they're heroes. Yeah, they are heroes. Like, firefighters are heroes too. But they're doing something because they believe they can help the world. You can help the world too, whether it's just saying hi to somebody or doing something. It's not your job to do that, but it's a way that we should all act towards each other. It shouldn't even be something that would be considered a job. It just be considered good moral sense. And I know I literally just like ranted there, but I like I said, I appreciate you.
You're obviously passionate about it. It obviously means a lot to you.
Yeah, well, I definitely think if you're going to do anything, you have to be 100% or 110% into. You can't half-ass anything, or nothing's going to get motivated. You're telling me that if you sit here and half-ass a podcast, or if you half-ass your work that you do trying to help others get their information and content out there, it's going to go to the places you want it to go. It's not going to happen. It's not going to get moving if you're not going to take the time and talk to these people and get these people's information and get them set up with other connections. If someone comes to you for help and you're just like, okay, and then you don't do anything, nothing gets done, nothing gets fixed. You're not setting them up with anything. These people come to you looking for help. You're looking as their source of a light to help these people get information out there. And that's wonderful because you're helping the world in a way that a lot of people don't look at anymore, but they're willing to take the time to listen to because, like Joe Rogan, for example, you start listening to him because if you're a fan of MMA, you find out he does a podcast. Well, let's hear what his podcast is about. Next thing you know, you're looking into the guests that he has on there, like Elon Musk and all these other types of people, and getting their understanding of things, and you start to get more information, without people that podcast or do these types of things, whether it's creating music, songs that someone can relate to, whether they're in a depressive slump or whether they're just looking for a good time and a time to be free and careless on their day off, or a movie where they can feel like they can unwind from reality and try and slip back into this little fantasy world. Like, it's all about enjoying life, whether it's the simplest things, because truly there's something special about it, and you have to just come to the conclusion of what it is for you.
Oh, definitely. All about meaning.
Yeah,
what meaning you give to it.
It's all about, like, what do you do that you find that a lot of people aren't interested in that helps you unwind or relax?
I don't know, really. I think wouldn't say that I have any interesting sort of hobbies that I have. The thing, I just have sort of the bog standard sort of hobbies to unwind, really. Really.
You're telling me you don't have one thing you enjoy doing in your free time, whether it's fishing, bowling, whatever the hell you want to get interested in, even spending time with your kid and taking them to amusement parks, sitting down and watching a Disney movie with them. I mean, obviously you enjoy those things, but do you ever go to something that you feel like a lot of people don't do that you find a hell of a lot of fun with? Like maybe you build IKEA furniture.
I'd say probably. I don't really know, to be honest with you. I just do the sort of the normal UK sort of hobbies, if that makes sense. I don't really have any quirky sort of hobbies. I used to play football when I was younger, soccer, if you're in America, and yeah, I've got interest within that. I watch a sort of the Premiership or the League One football.
Yeah, well, I mean, you do
go and watch football, but I don't have any. I wouldn't say I have any regular habits, if I'm being honest, or irregular.
But you do though, because you do this thing that you set people up with podcasts, dude. That's let me tell you something. I can 100% just with our conversation we've had is that I can tell you're a good person. Anybody that talks to you for 2 minutes can understand that just in the first 2 minutes because I understand.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely passionate about that. It gives somebody a voice.
There you go.
And I do that.
That's something a lot of people are like. Why the?
If I'm being honest.
A lot of people are just going to be like, why the hell do I want to help somebody get their goals done when I haven't even achieved anything? Well, is that a selfish way of looking at it? You can still, achieve your goals with also helping other people along the way. And you're doing a major thing that a lot of people don't take the time to do. And I commend you.
I think that's a bit it's a bit blindsided by not sort of thinking, you can help. I mean, for me, I wasn't ready to do a podcast at the time. About 12 months ago, I sat down with the person that I actually helped with his podcast 12 months ago, and I wasn't really ready to launch a podcast, so I didn't feel like I was ready, but I wanted to know all the I want to know the ins and outs of different bits and pieces, and I wanted to see how this podcasting thing sort of worked, sort of to the reach out letters, to get guests on your show, to doing all of that kind of stuff, which was quite unusual even to the podcaster at the time. But yes, it does bring a lot of enjoyment to me, as in to see people on different podcasts and to get people on different podcasts that might have a bigger reach or a bigger audience or thing. And I even listen to the podcasts. I listen to the podcasts that I set the guests up for.
To make sure you're finding the correct outlet for people. You're giving them the correct guests, not giving.
The main thing is that the opportunities that they're taking the most of the opportunities, but as well as that, it's about making great podcasts. To be quite honest with you, making good conversations, and that's sort of the main thing about podcasts. If you're not having great conversations, then it's not going to make a great episode.
Yeah.
And within that, I obviously have an invested interest. I suppose that comes down to caring about what I do, and caring about the people that I represent.
Yeah.
And giving that they get the platform that they feel happy with. You're not always going to get the right match. You're not always going to get the right match. But I've been lucky so far, as in I have got people that obviously want to think. I mean, really, if you want to have a podcast, you've got to be quite open, and you've got to put yourself out there. So I suppose in that way that you've already got those characteristics already, and they've got an invested interest in their podcast, that they want their podcast to be the best that they possibly can be, so that they will look after the guests. I mean, within the podcaster, I've helped podcasters out even just to get them sort of the questioning not for my guests, for their shows, and also obviously getting them guests the other side and getting them bios for their social media and all sorts of things in that way, to make a good episode. I think there's a lot that goes into making a good episode, and a lot of it comes down to the research that you do about the person, and the more information and the more research you do is important.
Yeah, especially for you, I can relate to a different style because
as well, if you've got people that have been on your show, I mean, some people, especially in America, and if you've had a podcast that's been running 4 or 5 years now, and some of the top guys have been on a lot of podcasts. So within that line of questioning, you've got to do your research to make the most of the opportunity. I always like to within the questioning that I sort of do, I like to make it so that you are actually getting to know the person. You're getting to know maybe their hobbies. There's been a couple of good guests that we've been able to put up with people, top guests, that has gone down a completely different rabbit hole. Obviously, it's taken to the standard rabbit hole, but it might open up that they've got a ranch or got a farm, and then they relate to them in that way. And then the podcaster's got a farm, and suddenly they're going off in a completely different direction. The other way, it might be, I've heard other podcasts that they've had a relation. I mean, sometimes they're friends, maybe they're not so friends, because that's how it can sort of start, is by all of this sort of the low-bearing fruit, which is obviously when you start your podcast, that you look after your low-bearing fruit, your friends, your family, maybe get them on board and do episodes with them, or people you know, and do it that kind of way. If you're not going to be reaching out and sort of make conversations in that sort of way, but then that within that, you know their interests, you know their hobbies, and I've seen others that have been sort of famous guests that it's gone down that they've actually had an interest. They've had sort of, they've both had an interest in cars or helicopters or things like that. So they've made that the niche that's binded them together, and they've related it to the topic that they're talking about. That might be business, it might be video games, but within that they've actually got to know the person, and I think that really opens up the conversation. Within that they make it relatable. They make it relatable to the person, and like you've been saying, I think that's important.
Yeah, man.
You makes the most of the podcast opportunity and the podcast episode. I mean, there's too many people now that you've really got to do your homework. You've really got to do your homework if you're really going to make and you're really going to take the opportunity, because sometimes you might get a top level guest, and suddenly they're thinking to themselves, oh, this guy, he knows his stuff. Is there anybody that I can help him out with for the next show? So you're developing that rapport with them, and then they're open up to all sorts of suggestions. It's all, and they're helping you out because you've helped them out by being on their show. So it can open up a right can of beans, and obviously it's important to you, for your listeners and your podcast, to do that and to put yourself as the authority and give that to give that expertise and to give back to that audience.
Yeah. And I dude, you hit the nail right on the head, man. Everything you said, I agree with. It's all about, developing your own experience and thoughts on stuff, gathering your own information on the world rather than being turned off to anything or something so simple, or it doesn't matter. The simplest thing has research and information behind it that you can gather and justify your own opinions. And I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be able to do my podcast, because it means the world to me.
Thank you, Robbie. Thank you for having me on, and then to your listeners.
And is there anywhere that you wanted to give a shout out or a plug to any of the links people can follow you at and contact you with your services?
Well, I mean, if they're interested in podcasts, if they want to know about me, they can reach out on Facebook Messenger. I'm on Facebook most of the time. That would be Fergus Matheson, or it would be on my business page of Podcast Genie. And they can contact with me if they've got any questions. I don't mind answering any questions, or keeping in contact. And that's how the world works. Great conversations.
Thank you, Fergus, for being on my episode Out of the Blank podcast. And I hope you keep this up and keep it going, because what you're doing is awesome, man. And I believe you got the tools. You got the tools and the power to make it anything you want.
Thank you, Robbie.
Talk to you later,
pleasure.
man.